All right. So Giuseppe the MC, Canadian, Italian, comedian.
Italo-Canadese, as we say.
Yeah. So you were born in Canada
I was born in Toronto, Canada.
and you speak such good Italian. Is your family pretty like Italian? Like you've got a lot of cousins and friends and family?
Well, what it is when we say that I speak Italian well, it's not that I speak Calabrese very well, which is Southern Italian. And although I was born in Canada, I didn't speak English till I was 5 because my parents spoke at home in Italian. My dad spoke English because he had gone to Canada in 1967 from Calabria, Italy. And, I think there was a program back then when that they paid students from overseas or immigrants from overseas to learn English. So he had learned some English, and he was in the trades. But then he went back, married my mom, brought her back to Canada in 1973, and but at home they're not going to speak English to each other.
That's a blessing, though, right? Yeah. Because for us now, we're all us similar-aged Italians are now trying to learn Italian. I've been doing Italian lessons for 4 years.
Yeah,
and it's hard because you're not immersed.
You know what it is? It's it's hard for me to speak Italian. You know what? I've been around enough different variations of Italian. For those who are listening or watching, there are variations of Italian because every province, every city, some towns next to each other, they speak different.
Totally.
And so, when I'm interviewed in Canada by Italian radio stations or Italian television stations, I bumble a little bit because I don't want them to hear my dialect. Right?
Yeah.
And but overall, it's been okay. It's just it was a challenge because I didn't speak English till I was 4 or 5 years old, and they sent me to school. And when I got to school after a few days, these teachers figured out I wasn't quiet. I didn't
know what
speak the language.
Yeah.
And I always remember the teacher sent a note home to my mom saying your son doesn't speak English, and my mom asked me, what does this say? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what it says. But eventually I learned it. So English is my second language, even though I'm Canadian.
And so, do you translate? Do you use all this material as part of your act? As part
absolutely.
of your show? Is this all part of your sort of, I guess, these are all life, like, because I wouldn't say I grew up in as much of an Italian household, but like the life that we had growing up is just hilarious. And so it's sort of like what you consider normal life, and then you tell other people about it, they start laughing. And
well, it's funny that you say it was hilarious. It was actually a tragedy. We all went through, we suffered, as children of immigrants.
Yeah.
Or grandchildren of immigrants, let's say whomever. And we say suffered. We didn't have a hard life. It was just a challenging life because, we wanted to be like our, in your case, your Aussie counterparts, or in my case, my Canadian counterparts. But we were singled out and the things that we were allowed to do and weren't allowed to do, we cried about it at the time. But then as you start to share the stories, then the laughter comes out because you're like, oh, that happened to me too. That happened to me too. And you're like, what? I think I have something
coping,
here. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I tell my kids, like, the difference between an adventure and an ordeal is attitude,
Absolutely.
And so I think that, when you look at these things we went through, it's so important to have the right spin on it and make sure that you don't victimize yourself too much.
That's right.
And try and say, well, we made it, and it was a challenge and we got through it. And I think the Italian culture around the world is quite revered now. Like, it's in Australia, it's so respected, and it's a beautiful culture, and everyone loves Italian food, everyone loves Italian cars, everyone loves Italian fashion. It wasn't always like that, but they've made it really. Like, they've done quite well around the world. And
I think what the Italians have done is because for them to have chosen to leave Italy, it was a lot. To say, hey, you know what? We're starving at home here. There's not enough work. I can't raise a family. I heard there's a great place to go, and there were several choices. And Italians have gone everywhere.
They have.
Most predominantly, obviously, America, and then Canada and Australia. But you find Italians in England. You find Italians in Ireland. You find Italian. It sounded a little Irish when I said they're in Ireland and. Dubai, they go everywhere, wherever there's work. And a lot of cultures have done that. And so, but, the Italians had a hard time in the beginning, a very hard time in the beginning. They were tortured when they went to these countries because the most native at the time would be, we say the Australians, but they came from, Australians aren't
native
unless they're Aboriginal. They're not native either. But they were there for hundreds of years prior to the Italians coming in, let's say, and other cultures. We say this, we talk about all cultures, but we only know the Italian side. But eventually, the Italians worked hard and built businesses and created community and such, to the point where no one could say anything about us, because we helped. I'll say this to anybody in the world: Italians helped build a lot of infrastructure physically, and so and they provided.
Well, they were imported labor at the time, weren't they? Really, they built most of the US because of all the cities were imported labor.
That's right, railroads.
And
then on top of that, we have great food. So eventually you don't mock people that are feeding you. Right?
That's right. Well, we went through a phase in the 70s and I guess 70s and 80s here where have you ever seen any of our Australian the comedy that was on TV, and did Canada have that same sort of stuff? We used to have these hilarious, they're totally politically incorrect TV shows, afternoon sitcoms, the Australian with the wog son-in-law or the Italian, I don't know what your pejorative for, do you guys say wog or wop?
No, we don't say wop. Sometimes we say wop.
Yeah.
But that's very derogatory. I mean, I know wog is derogatory, but now we've turned it and flipped it and taken it for ourselves.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Not like you bloody migrants. You're coming out here, taking our jobs, perving on our women, breathing our sunshine. Why don't you go back to your own country? Listen.
For the last time, I'm an Australian. I was born here.
Where?
Wagga.
That'd be right.
What's the intention, really? I think it's still derogatory, and sometimes, my mates, we will say it to each other, or the wogs are coming, or it's a wog dinner, or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
But obviously, it's the intention that's behind it, whether it's intended to hurt you or upset you.
Listen, it's always how you say it.
Correct, yeah.
It's how you say it. If you're going to say, oh, look, it's those effing wogs. Okay, now you're actually being derogatory towards them. But if you're amongst ourselves, hey, wog, get over here, that's a different story, right?
Yeah.
It takes the difficulty, and what I was saying earlier about the tragedy, right? It takes the challenge that you've had, and you say, you know what, I'm going to own this myself. And when you take something for yourself and you own it, it doesn't hurt you anymore. There's sometimes it'll sting.
Yeah.
But good on all the wogs for embracing it and saying, you know what, we are wogs. We are different than you, and we're proud of it.
Well, I think when you become, this is probably true of anything. When you become okay with whatever the issue is, then it becomes less powerful, right? If you're actually succeeding in life, people can say whatever they want to you.
Exactly.
It's when you're really struggling and when you're hurting and when you're trying to get ahead and life's unfair and difficult, then, things can really get you down. But obviously, as a culture, we've started progressing, and then I think what it is, it's almost like a hierarchy, for lack of a better word, of who's last on the chain of immigrants. At the moment, the newest people to Australia are probably the ones copying the stuff that our parents copped, 50 years ago. And we've sort of become, and then I think after me, there was probably Vietnamese we had in Australia. We had these runs of different immigrants. And the last guy on the chain seems to be the new guy and cop it. You know what I mean? But we're all the new guy at one point.
I can imagine a lot of Italians themselves saying, these immigrants are kind of
they do.
Who are you?
That's a discussion that's happened many times.
That's funny.
So did you have, I guess, I was just thinking, did you have that type of comedy? You didn't have the ethnic comedy on TV and stuff in Canada?
No. You know what I find about Australia? You guys are a little bit more relaxed with how you, these shows. And there was nothing we were way more politically correct in Canada, and I think that was a bad thing because it kind of didn't give us a chance to embrace.
Yeah, we celebrated it a little bit. There was a show called Well, do you know many of the Australian ethnic comedians like Nick Giannopoulos?
Yeah, I know of Nick.
Obviously, you know Joe Avati.
Yes, of course. Joe's we're friends now, but it was my idol at one point. But
Yeah.
we're
Well,
buddies,
our family loves him. We've gone and seen
great.
him a million times. And there was the WOG comedy. I mean,
That's right.
Nick Giannopoulos had WOG Boy and had all these movies and
I think
stuff.
there was a show
Acropolis Now, which was the
Now.
Greek guys in the cafe.
Yeah, with George Campaneris as well. And
What's happened? Look what she did to my rearview mirror, mate. Look at that. Look what she did, mate.
Hey, it wasn't my fault. I was trying to fix my hairs right, and his stupid furry dice got in the way.
Well, you could have untied them, Effie. You didn't have to rip the whole thing off. You know what I mean?
So you didn't have that type of stuff, or
it was, but it wasn't as predominant as
Right.
like that. Like
it was
that.
huge, yeah.
Yeah, no, I know. And I would hear rumblings about it, right?
Yeah.
Remember, social media has really helped us in Canada see what was happening in other places. You know, in these clips. There's one show, and I think it's in Australia. I think it's filmed in Australia, where there's like a teacher, and the whole classroom is full of different cultures. And the funny part, the teacher comes up and explains, says a phrase, or it says, "How's your day?" And all the students who are like adults, they're like, it's an ESL class.
Yeah.
Are describing their
right.
day, and it's all about the culture, and it's so hilarious.
Sure.
It's so great. And,
Yeah.
those shows are good. They're good to help really normalize that.
I think, exactly. You laugh at it rather than fear it, and have the discussion, which is sort of what we were saying before about my podcasting. Like, the reason I love these conversations is because we're getting, particularly more so now after COVID, I think we've become very tribal and very sort of, people sort of tend to stick to their group or their opinions, and we need to have that conversation more and remember there's more, I guess, the same about us than there is different,
Absolutely.
How have you found, speaking of differences, like Australia, there must be some things that you come here. I mean, you've been here before, right?
I've been lucky enough to been here. This is my 5th time now in Australia, and I'm a lot more used to it now. I'm not saying I'm a veteran of coming to Australia, but in the beginning, it was a lot of open your eyes, and I was actually upset the first time I came. I was upset at my parents, my dad in particular. I said, when you left, you chose to go somewhere.
Yeah, right.
Instead of hooking left, you hooked right. And his plan was, it's why would you go to Australia? It's so far. It's so far. Yeah, but you would have been in paradise. This is truly a paradise of a country. It's an island.
Yeah.
And and I know there's a lot of problems as well, but so far I've seen coastal living for most of it, or an hour drive away, or the food here grows a lot better. It's you can grow citrus, like lemon trees, and you can grow olives, and you can grow so many things that we just don't have, and our season is short. Our growing season is just the summer, our summer, which is basically from June, but May you start planting till like September, and then we harvest everything. And in Canada we have Thanksgiving. I know you don't celebrate that here, but the reason for Thanksgiving is that you were able to harvest all this food and then celebrate and so on and so forth. But there are differences. There are plenty of differences, obviously. But I think for the most part, when you really look at the core, the people, the Italians anyway, at least what I see, because I'm spending most of my time with Italians, we're virtually the same. Outside of the accents. And a few small things. I feel like I'm at home. I'm so comfortable here in Australia.
Yeah.
I've been here. I've performed more shows in Australia than I have in Canada. And in the U.S., I've only gone a couple of times. Because the U.S. is different than here and Canada. They're 4 generations out, 5 generations out. Most people start to immigrate to. Italians anyway started to immigrate to the U.S. over 100+ years ago. So we're talking great grandparents,
right?
And the Italians in the U.S. are Italian, and I won't take that away from them. But they're They're just different.
Yeah.
They're different because it's like, you know, our kids and our grandkids, they're not going to be like us. It's impossible. It's impossible because it gets washed out.
They're further from the original source of the culture.
Right. That's right. So, you know, they don't even speak. My show has dialect. Not as much as it used to. My original show was like 40% in Calabrese. 40%. Because I was really mimicking my mom a lot. The whole show was about my mother. And then over time, I started to progress. I'm like, if I want more people to come watch my shows, I got to speak more English. So there's still about 10% punch in there. Some dialect and stuff. But that show, when I brought it here 7 years ago, it went extremely well.
Yeah.
I did it in the U.S. and they were staring at it. They were staring.
Yeah.
They still enjoyed it, but I could tell they were struggling because they just don't speak the language. They don't understand some of the nuances that I was talking about because they don't experience it. But yeah, I love it here. Yeah. And to see that I can move around to different cities is phenomenal.
And you've got like a following, I guess, with social media and everything. They all see you. They know when you're coming. You've got the content's there, and that's been awesome, I guess, to help you get your career spread out. You know, you're not really a stand-up though, are you? Like, because is it a stand-up? I mean, what sort of comedy? Because I was thinking about this, having just recently tried and failed at stand-up comedy. Is it more of a show or is it more of a stand-up? What would you sort of category?
It's still so it is a stand-up. I am doing stand-up. But the difference between, let's say, myself and other incredible comics mine is very scripted. So it's kind of like a show, right? Like a straight, you know, like I know exactly what I'm saying for the first word to the last word. I deviate just a little bit. But yeah, it's very prepared, right? Yeah. I'm more of a storyteller, comedian. I'm not like a punch, joke.
Yeah, right.
I like to build stories. There's some points in my show where there's dead silence for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, but that's because I'm building a story.
When my mother says maybe, just cut out the maybe. It's straight to no. Non si messo andate meg. Why, ma? A me non mi piace andate meg.
And then I
hopefully
smack at the end with laughter, right?
Yeah.
And it's a little different. I have never ever performed at a comedy club.
Yeah.
I have.
Well, that's what I was thinking, more like the open mic sort of comedy club style.
I don't do that.
Because it seems like your success. I was watching some of your material and your story about going, for the viewers that haven't heard the history, like, you know, you MC'd, Giuseppe the MC started off as an MC.
That's right.
You know, at the sister-in-law's wedding, and, you know, it was just like, oh, everyone suddenly goes, wow, this guy's awesome. And then you started moving in that. But like, it feels, because as I said, like, with, you're not comparing it, my comedy career to yours, but I found it to be such a challenging, like, if I was going to get into comedy, I could just imagine the hits I'd have to take with the bombing and the trying material that just sucks, and putting things out there that works, and it just, and you might correct me and say, no, that's not what happened at all, but it seems as though you've been on a pretty good, steady flow of just, like, I wouldn't say just success after success, but it doesn't seem like you had really, like, massive crashes or failures, because your material was I did
everything completely backwards, like completely backwards. It was, my first show stemmed from my sister's wedding. So my sister's wedding, at this point, I already had a lot of experience as an MC, but I wasn't the MC of the wedding. I was, you know, the brother in the bridal party. You know, I can't MC myself, introduce myself in. And so, but I did the brother speech, right? And the brother speech was all in Calabrese, all in my dialect, about how my mother loves my new brother-in-law more than she loves me.
Right.
And I just attacked my mom and I attacked my brother-in-law. Like, but, you know, it made them show the relationship they have, and I'm standing in the back. We're like, hey, I'm here. I'm your son first, right? Yeah. And somebody at that wedding was requesting the video, the wedding video. Now, who requests wedding video? Like copy. They wanted a copy of the wedding video. And so they were bugging my dad every day. My dad was bugging me. I go, ask Mariangela, my sister. Like, I don't, it's not my video. And then he was asking me so much that I said, hey, listen, Pa, you know what? Tell her name is Maria De Leo, a 94, now she's 94, a spectacular woman.
Wow.
She's like the matriarch of a bakery in Toronto. I go, just tell her I'm going to put on a show for her myself. Right? I'll put a group together. And then I just got this thing in my head.
Why not do it?
I was going to do it. And I rented a theater. I rented a movie theater. It cost me a couple $1,000. I was selling tickets for $20. I said, as long as I get 100 people out, I break even.
Exactly, yeah.
It was a 400-seater. And I don't know. I just started I designed my own posters, and I started telling me, hey, guys, I got a show coming up. And I don't know what happened, but I sold it out.
Wow.
And then the demand was so big that I added a second night. I had never actually performed comedy before. I was just a funny MC, or I can say a funny speech. And I'm like, I have a 1-hour special coming out with 800 people, essentially, 400.
Amazing.
And I'm like, what do I do? I haven't even written the show yet.
Yeah.
Because I sold it out 6 months prior to the day. I'm like, I got to get going here.
Wow.
And so I think that pressure put me in a position where I better come up with some great stuff. And again, I picked a topic, my mom. And I just reflected back to some stories. And everything I've ever said on stage is 100% accurate. Obviously I embellish a little bit, to make it a little bit more funny, but they're true stories that happen.
Yeah. So
after I had done this, I quit my job. I'm like, this is what I want to do.
How old were you when that happened? Was that?
I was 38. I'm 47 now. So,
8
it was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And
sliding doors. If it had bombed, what were you doing? What sort of work?
I was a finance manager in a car dealership.
Right, okay.
People would come in and I'd sit down with them and I'd take their credit down and I'd sell them rust proofing and warranties and stuff. I was that guy. And, I was the one who said, yes, you're approved, and no, you're not. And but from my emceeing, my head was always in the clouds because I'd go to work and I'm like, this is horrible.
Yeah.
It was a great job. I got paid very well. I had a free car. It was great. But I hated it. I hated going to work. I liked the Saturday night when I was emceeing a wedding. And then my first year, I'd only emceed one. And then second year, I made business cards, Giuseppe the MC. People were making fun of me that I chose this name, Giuseppe the MC. They're like, what are you, a rapper? Like, why did you choose this name? No one's going to hire you. And then slowly, when people started paying me to come show up to their events, and I take emceeing very serious. Like, I have a good time. And when it's time to be professional, I'm professional, but I always throw in a little bit of laughter in there. When I had done those shows, I had to go to work the next day because I took a week off of work.
Yeah.
I was so depressed when I got to work. I was so down. People were bringing paperwork to me. And I'm like, get this out of here. I'm a star. I don't need this. I don't want to do this paperwork. And within a week, I'm like, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. And then Instagram changed and were allowing us to make, 15-second videos. Because I needed to find a way to market myself. At the time, this was all word of mouth, that show that sold. I had 800 followers at the time. It was not, Instagram and social media had nothing to do with this, my first shows. But social media had everything to do with the rest. I started making these videos. I was goofing around a little bit, trying to be funny with, pretending I was cooking or stuff like that. And then one day, I said, I'm going to do the Calabrese word of the day. Because, there were certain words that are different. And the first word I said was Tzipangolo.
In the meantime, tell me what this word means in Calabrese. Tzipangolo. And my relatives are not allowed to answer.
Tzipangolo in my dialect means watermelon. And it's not said everywhere in Italy. It's just said specifically in my...
there's about 5 words for watermelon I know of already.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't know what happened. It was I call it Italian viral.
Yeah,
which was it wasn't millions, but it was hundreds.
Yeah.
And I started gaining, my followers went up 20 people. I'm like, wait, what happened here?
Wow.
And then I did another one. I was doing it daily. And that went well for like about a month and a half. And then one day I had a wig that I wore when I'd go to disco parties. It wasn't even my wig, it's my cousin's wig. And he's like, hey, here, wear this for the disco party. And I still had it. Yeah. I had gone to a disco party. I'm like, I'm going to put this on. And, because I had the voice of my mom, right? I can change my voice. So I'm going to make a video here. And it just went wild. And within 2 weeks.
Was that like your breakthrough video, that one?
Yeah. I had done a video basically where my mom had called me and I'm in bed and she's like, hey, are you, and it was Sunday morning. She says, hey, can you want to come by and eat? Here, I'm like, oh, ma, it depends. And this is all in dialect, by the way, right? Oh, it depends, ma. It depends what you're making. And she's like, well, I'm making pasta. And I'm like, no, I can't. The doctor said I shouldn't have any pasta because I'm gaining too much weight. And then she turns around and says, "Why, you don't love your mother anymore?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "Okay, Ma, I'll be there soon." Right? And again, in dialect, it's very like strong.
Yeah, and it's accurate.
There's tears.
Yeah,
my mother's crying, and I'm like, "Okay, Ma, I'm coming." Yeah. And that video catapulted me. It was such a silly video.
Yeah. I will put it on. We'll show the audience that video.
It's my first original video.
Ciao, ma. Ciao, Giuseppe, tu vuoi mangiare? Dipende, ma che stai facendo di mangiare? Volevo farci le file pasta. No, ma non credo, dottore dice che nei scalano pochi pisi e non posso mangiare pasta più. Perché mangiare da mamma non è buona? It's okay, ma come vengo, okay?
And then I started filming another one. And then eventually I got, like a better term, smart, and I started putting English translations after my 5th or 6th video. In English. And
like subtitles.
Subtitles, yeah, that's right. Because, you had a lot of people didn't understand. Italians didn't understand what I was saying because it was so
dialect. Yeah.
And once I did that, there's one particular video where I say it's the video that got me around the world. So if you're going to put anything, put that one.
Sure.
It's the video where, it's, the caption is where Italian kids go shopping.
Oh, yeah.
And basically,
is that the one where they go in the basement?
Yeah, that's right. I go into the basement. And I go into the canteen. Right, I know Australia you don't have canteens, but you go into the garage,
pantry or the garage. Yeah,
that's right.
All the
and
sauces
I have a container. And
yeah.
Hi, Mom, and she's like, "Hi, son," and she's frying some cutlets.
Yeah.
And I go and I take things off the shelf. And I have a list. I'm like, oh, I need sauce.
Yeah.
Lupini and stuff.
Excellent.
And I call up. I fly up the stairs. Okay, Mom, I'm leaving. And she's like, hey, do you want a cutlet? I'm like, yeah, sure. This video changed my life.
Yeah,
and I almost didn't even post it because I hated the way I recorded it because I had a crappy tripod. It was on an angle. It was really bad. And I'm like, I'll just post it, see what happens.
Wow.
That video got me around the world. People from Australia were messaging me. You got to come here. You got to perform here. And remember, I had just done the shows in Toronto like a few months earlier. That one that after I quit my job, I was planning to do another show in Toronto. And I said, maybe I'm going to add Montreal, which is another great city. It's my favorite city in Canada. There's a lot of Italians there. I said, I'll go see what happens over there. And then as I was, making these videos, people from Australia had reached out to me. And I, within 1 year, I was touring Australia. And I was touring Canada and the US.
So when you say your career went backwards, expand on that a bit. So do you mean that because you essentially just became successful, or you didn't have those sort of
I didn't have
nights
any
in the comedy club?
I never experienced this.
Took a backward step.
But remember that show was the exact show. I never deviated.
Yeah.
For comedians are like musicians. We have, a band. When you go see a set list, you have a set, and you perform it, and that's it. I revere comedians that hop on stage and do complete crowd work. I've seen like you say, like Russell Peters, who's spectacular, and he started off with the whole cultural comedy. Yeah, that guy will fill out a stadium without a set and go there and just talk to some people and just kill. I'm a little envious because they can do it. I'm happy for them. I want them to succeed, but I want to be able to do it myself. As an MC, I kind of I can work the crowd a little bit, but I'm scared to do a comedy club. I'm scared to you know, people have called me and say, hey, why don't you do, you know, the local, and I'm like, no, I'd rather, it's just what I've done is I'd rather build a room full of people and convince people to come watch my show and, you know, make it this grand, you know, 500, 600 people, 1,000 people.
Yeah.
I did an arena. I produced my own arena show last year, 4,000 people. I did it all by myself.
Well done, man. Yeah, it's awesome.
But put me in front of 30 people, I'll crash. I think mentally I won't be able to do it.
It's a different dynamic. I mean, like I said, you know, I'm into comedy. Like I love it, and I have my respect as well for the comedians and the way they do it. And when I did my stand-up set, it was just a 5-minute set. And it did really well, and the club actually asked me to come back and open for a guy the next night, and it just bombed. Like it was
the same set,
exactly the same set. And you're like, what is going on? And I'm no comedian by any means, but like I got through in a comedy competition to a final, and then that set that I did to get me in the final, the guy who owns the club said, hey, you know what, do that set tomorrow night as a warm-up for this other guy, plus you'll get more experience. And I came in there and it was just like terrible. And I just thought there's so many moving parts in this thing, you know, there's so many moving parts.
You know what it is? It all depends on who's in the room.
That's right.
That's why I like to produce my own shows, because I know who's coming. I don't physically know them yet, but I know them.
Yeah.
I know that it's this archetype of person that's in the room. And, you know, I'm more confident now where if there was other people in the room, I can handle it. But yeah, I produce.
And they know what they're coming for.
Yeah, exactly,
as well, right?
exactly. So they're coming to see me.
Yeah.
They're coming to see the guy who makes the funny videos online.
Yeah.
They're coming to the guy who, you know, is some family member from another city said, hey, you got to go see Giuseppe. I just saw him. Like, it's great.
And it's relatively, I guess, it's kid-friendly-ish. Like, there's nothing offensive.
My
really.
show, I always think my mother's in the audience, and I always think my children in the audience. And yeah, I push the buttons a little bit. I do talk about a lot of cultures and race and stuff like that, but it's all always referencing back to the Italians. So if I make, let's say, fun of, like, say, the Chinese or Indians, I'm actually making fun of how Italians handle these other beautiful cultures as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
How
does the Italian culture go with your hair? When did that start? Because I was thinking my nonna, man, she was always very strict on the way I looked and always critical of everything. I'm thinking,
right now I have it actually tamed.
Yeah,
man.
you have it tamed. That's
I have
right.
it tied back. I can't.
Because you've had a few different looks, really.
You know what? I've always. This is before comedy. I was working in the dealerships, and I had one day I had gone to a Formula One race in Toronto.
Yeah.
F1, and I was just walking by, and I saw this guy, and he had his hair shaved on the sides, and it was just like slick, like it was in a certain way. And I'm like, I was in awe. I was like fanboy. This guy. I'm like, wow, it's the coolest haircut I've ever seen in my life. And I literally went home, and it was the most wild thing I've ever done. I just like buzzed my hair with like clippers, and everybody was screaming at, what'd you do? What'd you do? What'd you do?
You weren't in comedy yet?
I wasn't in comedy. I was emceeing stuff.
Sure.
But I wasn't like in comedy, and it was just a shock. And it was nothing. It was just buzz inside. Now it's even growing on it right now, but I'm just saying in general. And it was this shock factor. Wherever I would go, people were like, yeah, I like your hair. Yeah, I like your hair. Yeah, I like your hair. I like your hair. I'm like, I'm so blessed that I saw this guy for a second.
Yeah.
And then I've always said, you know, there's two parts to me. There's, you know, and now that my career has progressed, is I want to be able to make them laugh, but I also want them to remember my look. And I've done so many things. Like I've had my hair like really tall, like about, you know, I don't know how to say it because I always go by inches, like 18 inches. So it's about 30 centimeters, 30 high. And you know, long beards, and then I started adding colors, and then I always sparkle. I'm sparkly all the time. And I just want, when people come, they're like, what's he doing? And then, you know, hopefully when they start laughing, they're like, hey, he's funny. And they always want to take pictures because they're like, you know, this week or whatever. But yeah, it's been I've always, I've been doing this now for 8 years, and still my mother, are you sure you're going to go out like that? I go, Ma.
Yeah.
I'm traveling the world right now doing comedy. Just leave me alone. I got it. Right?
Yeah.
But it's there's always something there, and it's not just the hair. Like
that
bright
look you had,
outfits,
yeah,
and bright shoes. And
where'd you get those Jordans, man? They were
those are
were they custom? Because I could not find that colorway.
No,
anywhere.
they're custom. They're custom.
Yeah.
I've been lucky that I have a few.
We'll put those on the screen as well.
Yeah, some sponsors that have come out and say, "Hey, listen, we want you to."
Yeah.
You know, there's one, I'm gonna name drop them. They're Père Louis. It's a company in Toronto that does all my clothing. They just said, hey, as long as you wear our clothes forever, we'll take care of you. And they've just been doing that. And then the shoes was a fan who said, hey, can I throw some shoes on you? He's Drip Toronto. They just does shoes. And I'm like, yeah, but only if you custom do them, right? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. And I came up with the design with him, and I'm like, this is great.
Yeah.
But lugging those things around, because they're bulky.
Oh, you still have them with you?
I'm wearing them on tour now.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So those are great. Not the outfit. What you're probably referencing is from my arena show.
There was one big, it was bright yellow and
no, it was pink. It was bright pink.
Oh, bright pink.
Yeah, that's okay. It was bright pink, and it was custom suit, and
I
put
wild,
on
man. And your hair was massive, and you had all the colors in the side.
Yeah.
That was cool. What was that for?
That was for the arena.
The arena big
show,
one, yeah.
And I just said,
looks like it killed.
During the pandemic, I hadn't done comedy for 3 years, right? And so I said, when I come back, I'm come back big. That's where this idea, the arena came from. The arena I thought about years ago when I went to go watch Sebastian Maniscalco, who's one of the top comedians in the world. And I remember watching him first in a smaller theater of like 800-900 people, which is still huge in comedy world. But, in retrospect, he had done this arena in Scotiabank Arena, which is he had like 19,000 people there. And I remember sitting there, and I'm like, I didn't even watch the show. I was just watching the whole setup. How do I get 19,000 people in a room? What do I got to do? And I'm calculating everything. And that was in my mind for years and years. And then during the pandemic, you start to lose your mind. You're like, your career's gone. You're not making money. You know how everybody was locked down. Where comedians we were last on the list of things that people can go see and do.
Correct. Yeah.
And so I went mental.
Yeah.
And so in the interim of all that, I'm like, okay, that's it. When I come back, I'm going to come back big. Now I couldn't do 19,000. I'm not Sebastian Maniscalco, and I understand that. But I put on this show, and man, that was a struggle.
Yeah.
To get people to come because I had to remember I was stopped for 3 years, and I was making funny videos in the interim, but it still wasn't shows.
Sure.
And when you're trying to convince people to come watch you do comedy when they haven't seen you do comedy in years, it was a challenge. But I'm grateful I went through that. I'm grateful I've gone through everything I've gone through. I still design all my own posters, my own website, good or bad, however they look. I know I did it. I'm still knocking on doors to sell tickets. Messaging people. If I see sometimes on people's social media, you don't know where they're from exactly, but if you see the lingo and how they speak, then you can kind of if we're talking about our mothers, if they'll write mum, I'm like, this is an Aussie.
Yes.
Because only Aussies write mum.
Yeah,
M-U-M. And I'm like, oh, hey, you're from Australia. Where do you live? And then, I'm DMing them.
Yeah.
And I try to pinpoint what city they're in and say, hey, here's
Come to town.
Come watch my show. And,
yeah.
You think after so many years, why am I still doing this? Because, I still need to do it. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah, well, it's a grind, and I think that like anything, there's that top echelon which is very rare and very thin, and then there's the idea that can. There's a lot of things that have to fall into place to be a Sebastian Maniscalco.
That's right.
Or these guys that are just at that top level, and even the other thing with comedians, I guess, is. Maybe you're sort of a bit like a rock band as well. People sort of go through waves where they're interested and then they fall off, and then they're not.
Especially with today's society, people are becoming famous online
Yeah.
for just doing goofy videos. So now you're competing with them as well.
Yeah.
I was in the middle because I started doing comedy first, and then I started making these videos, and then let's say, lack of better terms, it became I call it Calabrese famous, not ultimate, but and so. people think my success derived from my social media. No, social media just got me out there.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of comics in the beginning who had like put in the grind, who were very upset. They were upset with me. And I'm like, hey, man, no one told you not to do videos. Like, you can do these too. No. And so, you know, I copped. Like I was in the middle of it because I had done the experience. I had the experience, but then I just found a way to use it.
Yeah.
But there's some people that are doing it only from there first, and great. You know, use the tools you have to grow success. But
the game's changed. It's like taxis and Ubers, man. Like, it's the same sort of thing. Like, you know, taxi drivers used to be quite upset with Uber drivers, and you know they're not real. You know, and I think it's the same, like, because I've got some friends who are comedians, and you know they are that old school, work the clubs, work the circuit, you know, and for one reason or another they never broke, and then someone shows up who's dropped sort of a viral video, and then they can sell
nobody wants to pay and see them.
And then it's It
is frustrating. I feel for comedians.
Yeah,
I feel for comics that have been paid in chicken wings for the first 10 years of their lives.
Yeah.
You know, but then I also look at them and say, hey, listen, you're an artist. Figure it out.
That's right. Like, well, that's the other thing, isn't it? Like, you can't, don't hate the player, hate the game, as they say.
I think, the biggest challenge is people don't understand that there's more than just to make people laugh. There is a massive business behind this.
Absolutely.
It's a massive business. People think, I put something out there and people come out, and I am constant. Like,
well, do you think your car sales experience, that's that sort of sales environment?
Yeah, I'll say that. I'll say that.
Because I think that, like, I have a sales background.
Yeah.
And I think that has served me for everything I've ever done.
Oh, absolutely.
Even if it just be trying to get the assistant at the what do you call them? We call it Vic Roads in Victoria, but the motor, when you're trying to get some help from the person to register your car, a bit of, a bit of ability to communicate and encourage and
absolutely.
Steer
like,
I
have a degree in finance, and I have a Bachelor of Commerce in business and such, and I will take what I learned in the car business over that any day of the week.
Of course,
it was just very, and I didn't even sell cars. I sold the rust proofing and warranty.
Yeah.
So they
that's the real sales.
Customers are coming in.
Yeah,
they'll spend weeks on picking a car, picking the color, picking the sales guy or the sales girl is pushing hard to make this sale happen. It's a big struggle. Then they come into my office for 15 minutes, and after they just agreed they're going to pay $300 a month or whatever, $500 a month, and they don't have a penny more, and the sales guy comes in and says, just listen, this guy, like, they're not going to buy anything. Just don't screw up my sale, pressuring them. I'm like, yeah, no problem. And the customer sits in front of me and says, okay, this is what's going to happen. You're going to change this. You're going to do this. You're going to add rust proofing. And they're like, yeah, okay. And it'll piss off the sales guy, because they're like, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Well, it's this gift of gab, and
that's real sales. There's degrees of salesmanship, and it goes with every industry. Like, there's the order taker salesman, to the elite. Like, I think anything that doesn't have. See, when you're selling that rust proofing, you don't have the marketing machine of, like, let's say it's Toyotas. That person that comes in to buy that Toyota has seen the Toyota's marketing. They've seen their friends drive Toyotas. They've seen Toyotas on the road. So there's this big machine behind that sale. And then they walk in there with an idea that they want a new car, that they sort of understand the product, they understand the brand, and the salesman there, he has a job to do, but he's got a lot of help. And then something like rust proofing, you've got to educate the buyer on what the hell it is. And, you've got to get that through that in that 15-minute window.
Exactly. And take their credit application. Yeah. And it's not just the rust proofing. In 15 minutes, you got to talk about the rust proofing and the warranty and the life insurance. And the scratch and tire insurance. Imagine selling warranties on vehicles that you just were convinced that will never break down. Your car's not breaking down. This is Toyota. This is Honda. They're not going to break down. And listen, you're going to need a warranty.
There's probably a chance it's going to break down.
There's a chance it's going to break down. We have this, and I always say to them, like, how is it going to break down? Oh, listen, look at our building here. Look at our physical building. 10% of it is the showroom. and 90% is the mechanic shop.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
what's the reason? It can't be just for oil changes.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, you're right. I'm like, yeah, you're right. You know, so
Yeah.
But it is, you know, back to what you're implying of what all this is every job is a sales job. Every job. If you have a business, you're in sales. If you're a comedian, you're not. Comedy is just the product.
Correct.
You're in sales. And if I do not fill a room, I didn't do my job as a salesperson. When I'm on stage, and you know, I'm so grateful that people even think about spending money on me. But if I'm on stage, if it's not sold out, my brain starts to spin.
Yeah.
When I see that, I can see that one empty
seat. You're like,
one, and I'm not focused on the. Let's say it was a 400-person show. The 399 people are there. My brain is saying, why didn't I get one person in that chair? What was it about me? And we're always beating ourselves up. And that's what drives me to say, hey, somehow the next time I'm gonna fill.
Well,
that
a lot
seat.
of comedians don't talk about this, you know. And like I said, with my brief exposure to the comedy scene, like a lot of it is I'm going to show up and people are going to love me, and then they're going to follow me around, and it's like not going to work like that. It's not going to work like that. As soon as you leave the stage, you're going to leave their mind. And especially now in this world where we've got so much stimulation bombarding us from every angle, and you know, Instagram's constantly, someone's got something new and awesome to throw in our face, and Facebook's got something. And so I think that, you know, putting yourself out there and literally grabbing someone on the street and saying, hey, I need you to come to my show. You're going to have the best time. Da, 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 da. My name is Giuseppe the MC, blah, blah, blah. And that's one ticket sold. Bang. Next. You know, You know, I think, and occasionally you'll get a guy will bring 10 of his mates. Great. That's 10 done, you know. But,
they're my best friends, you know.
Yeah.
And when people say, hey, I just bought tickets to your when somebody messages me and says, hey, I just bought a pair of tickets to your show. Thank you. Wonderful. I really appreciate it. Can you, and I literally say, let your friends know, let your family know, let the neighbors, the dog, like I'll make a joke about it, but I'm serious.
But you're serious, yeah.
Because they're your best advertisers are your super
existing
fans.
customers,
and I can tell you that my fans have been, I hate even using that word fans. It's so pretentious to me. I don't know. Literally they all become my friends eventually. Like, you know, and I really I have never not replied to anybody. Somebody sends me a message, I reply. And it's not just like a hey, thanks or a thumbs up. Like I really try to engage conversation because, you know, if they're spending the time and more importantly, they're spending their money on me, why not engage? Now, again, that's me at, you know, at this level, you know, X amount of followers. I don't know. And I hope one day I have 1 million followers. And I don't know if I'll be able to engage as much at that level, but I'm going to do my best.
Yeah, but at that point, you probably have the resources to invest in replying, you know, like maybe it be someone that you could actually have work and do that and filter out the ones that, you know, and but caring for your fans is the point, right? And I think that comes through in authenticity of those who love the job and those who are sort of, you know, doing it for the right reasons and those who aren't, you know what I mean?
It's when you get the message of, I can't come to your show, and then, you know, say, hey, why? Oh, I'm in my family's in hospital or something, and then I get into this whole, what do you mean? What's going on? And I'm sincere about it. I really want to know what's going on because I do have this connection with these people that are, you know, over the years they've become my friends all over the world, and they're
you've got a home everywhere you go, right?
Yeah,
man, everyone would be everywhere. This thing opens so many doors.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, everywhere you go. I saw you were out last night. Now, I'm not sure if you knew the guys that you were out with, like at the bar, but it looks like, you know, everywhere you go, you've just got friends and people wanting to, you know.
We've become friends. Like, that's just the key word. I've become friends with all these people. And if there's anything that comedy has given me, it's opened my eyes to how many great people there are on this planet.
Absolutely.
And I've sincerely become friends with so many people. And they treat me, in the beginning, they treat me like, oh, this star comedian. I'm like, guys, just let's go for dinner. Let's have a good time. Let's just talk. And I love it. I love being able to, at my phone, when I put somebody's name, I put their name and then I'll put like, you know, Brisbane. or
how you know them, yeah.
And so then, and I sometimes I go back. I'm like, okay, I got to see who I got to talk to when I'm going to Brisbane. I type in the word Brisbane, and like 50 names come up. I'm like, these are my friends. They've
great,
all
man.
become my friends, and it's wonderful. This career has given me so much more than just, like money.
Of course.
It's given me friendships, and it's given me experiences that I wouldn't trade in for anything.
How do you go being away from the family, and how do you go being away from home, and how does that affect them?
It is hard. It is hard to go. Especially this round was about a month. And it's hard to be away from my kids a lot.
You got 3?
I have 3 kids.
Yeah.
I'm separated now. It's been a few years, and so their mom and I get along very well in terms of communication, such like that. So I call her up and say how the kid's doing and stuff like that and so forth. Luckily, now with video calls, you can see them. You can but the hours are weird. We're here. Sometimes we're 14, 15 hours apart, and so you're waking up and they're going to bed or vice versa or whatever, right? And that is the challenge. But the only thing I can say about that is when I decided 8 years ago to do this full time, I'm home most of the time.
Sure.
I get to go to all the the recitals, whatever my kids are into, outside of that one block of a few weeks that I go away. My shows or weddings, one on a Saturday, I'll go do this and that. But I can say that even though I am away, I'm present. 300 days of the year or more. Like really, I get to drive my kids to school and pick them up and do whatever I can. And sometimes it's hard. Like my kids have always, because even their mom is a wedding planner, and so they know. Oh, tonight we're going to Nonna's house.
Mom and dad are both out.
Yeah. But they're used to it. I think they grew up. This has been 8 years now. My kids were small when I started this career, so they just got accustomed to it, and it is challenging. It is challenging for me. Sometimes you forget, like, hey, I got a whole family at home because you're out and you're busy. And like, hey, I'm actually doing this for them. I really don't.
Well, yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, this is all for my kids, right? And to pick up and to leave, and you say, sometimes you get criticized. Like, how do you leave your family for a month? I'm working. This is my job. This is the job that I chose, and I can, again, I turn around and say, okay, but I'm home most of the time. Don't you ever see that part?
Yeah, there's a lot of fathers sitting at the dinner table that are physically present and mentally absent. So,
that's right.
I mean, you'll be the best judge of that, whether you're there and whether the result will be in the relationship you have with your kids. Like, I think at the end of the day, if you've got to respect and your kids, we've all got to live, right? So,
right.
We're all trying to do our best, and you'll know it'll come across in the love that you get from your kids.
That's
and,
right.
if they're sort of excited to hear from you and they want to hear about your day and you want to hear about theirs, and distance and things like that can all be overcome.
That's right. I'm going through the biggest challenge of my life right now, where my oldest is he's got osteosarcoma. It's a cancer in his bone, in his ankle, and it was a big decision for me to come to Australia this time around because I'm leaving my sick child at home.
Hey everyone, so I have a pretty important announcement to make that I've sort of been keeping quiet about for 2 months now, since we found out. It is about my cancer, technically. Basically, with the way my cancer works, I have a tumor. And the tumor is in my foot. And basically, the method of treatment for this type of cancer when you have a tumor, a bone tumor, I guess, is you do chemo.
But everyone understands, and he understands the most.
How old is he?
He's 16. He's going to be 17 in June. And it's a big challenge because, you're like, I was in hospital every day for months and months with him, going back and forth. And I'm like, do I go to Australia? Do I go to Australia? Do I go to Australia? I'm like, if I don't go to Australia, what am I going to do? I still have to work. Sometimes people see, oh, you're going out, you're going to Australia, you're having a good time, you're partying, and your family's at home, and especially now your son's ill at home. No, I'm in Australia, so I can give my child what they need, right?
So what is osteosarcoma?
Osteosarcoma is basically it's a bone cancer.
Wow.
And so it grows on and in the bone. And it's very, very hard to...
So how did you find out about this? Like, what was the symptoms?
His foot was hurting. His foot, his ankle, right? It's in his ankle. And he was complaining. We had gone to Italy last summer, our summer, which was like July and August. And nothing. These kids dancing in the streets, the folk dancing, Artarandale. And, we went on these treks, nothing, no complaining, nothing. Come September, middle of September, a couple of weeks into the school year, because we start school in September, this kid's complaining about his foot. Saying, listen, my foot's hurting. First couple of days, what do you say? Hey, walk it off.
Yeah.
What do you got?
Growing pains.
Yeah, exactly. And after a week, say, this kid's, his foot's really hurting. I said, okay, his mom and I were talking about it. I said, I'll take him to the walk-in. And they, you couldn't physically see anything. It's not like it was red or swollen or anything. And the doctor says, hey, why don't let's do an X-ray and ultrasound. Okay. Those take some time. It took about a week to get the results, and there was nothing. And then the doctor said, hey, just get an MRI done. And at this point, I'm like, okay, I'm going to take it to my pediatrician, or his pediatrician, sorry. And did that, and the pediatrician had written it off. Say, oh, no, this kid's got nothing. Don't worry, he just needs orthotics. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, there's something there. And no, he needs orthotics. You could tell his foot's a little crooked here. And I'm like, you follow the orders of the doctor.
Sure.
Which was a big mistake. And we got him orthotics, but it takes time. I don't know if you ever had orthotics. There's a mold, and there's time, and you got to go, and it's 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
Well, after you got the orthotics, now we're talking like the end of October.
Right. So it's been 8 weeks of
pain, and we're just giving him like ibuprofen. Just kind of swelling, because again you couldn't see the swelling, but the ibuprofen helped, right? You started using the orthotics, and it just got worse.
Wow.
I guess because it was angling different.
Sure.
And then after like 3 months from September, basically now December, we insisted. Said, listen, either you get this kid an MRI and test everything in his body, or I'm going to go to the U.S. And pay. I don't care. Because we have free healthcare. It's through our taxes, but it's free healthcare. And we finally got this MRI done in December. It was December 19th. And that night they sent us an email saying, hey, you have a 7 centimeter tumor. We don't know exactly what it is, but you got to go check it out. That's it. The rest is history from there. We got a biopsy done. And he has what it is. I don't know if you know of Terry Fox. Terry Fox is a Canadian back in the 70s or 80s who his leg was amputated completely. And he did this jog across the country. Canada's big
country.
And to raise awareness. And so, we celebrate him every year. There's like Terry Fox run.
Right.
And the cancer had gotten to his lungs because the evil of this osteosarcoma is the next thing it does is go to the lungs. So, but back then there was no chemo treatments. There was no other treatment. So now my son's doing treatments, and we're not quite sure exactly what we're going to have to do with his foot or not. If we have to amputate, if there's some treatment and so on and so forth. But we've been working hard for months and months and months to come up with a solution.
Wow.
And so, not to have put this podcast into a downer, but
is there anything anyone can do? Like, is there anything that is there anything that helps? Is it sort of now just a matter of following the process that the doctors have laid out?
We're following the process. Listen, chemo is the best thing and the worst thing that you can ever do to anybody because it destroys everything. This kid's lost a little bit of his hearing because of the chemo. It's affecting a lot of things. But, you know, and there are alternatives, but osteosarcoma is specific.
Right.
It's the bone. So if you have a soft tissue tumor that you can either cut out or put radiation or something, it can be, you can reduce it. In theory, if we reduce this, you still have the bone to deal with. Like there's still going to be a hole in your bone. How do you?
Right.
You can't have a hole in your leg bone, right?
Correct. Yeah, I understand.
So some surgery is still going to be needed, and because it's specifically the ankle, if it was anywhere higher up on the bone, then they could take a piece out, put a piece of titanium, you know, replace. But when you're dealing with feet and hands, you cannot
remove bits, and
you can't remove bits because they're, you know, and you know your ankle is thin.
Yeah.
There's no meat and fat, you know. So when you're cutting things out, you're really cutting out everything. You're cutting out the nerves. And
Sure.
So it's been a lot. It's
Wow,
been a
man.
lot. It's been a very stressful
Yeah,
time.
I could imagine.
And you know, as a comedian, you still got to hop on stage and make people laugh.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I like to call myself a jester, where the jester, if you know the life of the jester. The jester lives
Brings
a very sad
entertainment,
life, but
adds levity.
but he laughs. He makes the king laugh, and hopefully, if the king's happy, he gets to survive another day.
Sure.
Because
Yeah, what a stress, man. And well, thoughts go out to him. How's he coping? Is it Damien? Yeah.
no, Domenico.
Domenico, sorry.
Like this kid's, he's amazing.
Yeah.
He went from an introvert to an extrovert overnight. Like, you know, it was tough in the beginning. Long hair. His hair started to fall out, and you know, we went to cut his hair, and I thought this kid was going to be disaster. I was bawling my eyes out. Shaved his head, and he's just like, "Okay, I'm okay. I look good. I'm good. I'm good." And it was just like he opened up an Instagram account. You know, I helped him out to gain some followers and such like that. And his mom. And people look forward to hearing him talk.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this kid is honest to God, like my strength. Like I can't believe it. I can't believe who he's become with this illness. And listen, he has his bad days. Trust me.
Yeah, of
I know
course.
that he's crying inside.
Yeah.
But he's brave, and I think that no matter what we do, if we end up amputating his foot, or I think he's just going to embrace it and make the best of it. And you know, we say, you know, if this is what's been dealt for us, it's for a reason. Whatever this reason is, higher power, anything, there's a reason. And he's great.
That's the way to look at it, I guess, is to, you know, you never know, do you? Like what, I was talking to another guest earlier this week, and we talked about like sometimes these things you have to say, why does this happen for me instead of to me, and try and, you know, you never know.
Never thought of it that way.
You know, and you don't know what comes from it, and even these sliding doors moments in your life where you were working, and then, you know, you've this opportunity that came up to, well, all the things that fell into place to have you become the MC of your sister's wedding that then lead you on this great adventure. I mean, God knows, you know what I mean? Like, so.
Yeah, exactly. We can't look at all the great things that happen and just say, I deserve this, and then then take the bad stuff too.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, the only thing that bothers me is, why does it have to happen to, it shouldn't happen to anybody. I wouldn't wish this upon anybody. But you know, why does it have to happen to children?
It's the worst, yeah.
And then, you know, when you're in hospital and you see these parents struggling, I feel for the parents a lot.
Yeah.
Again, my career has afforded me the opportunity to be there every day in hospital. You know, him, me, and his mom. Some parents, you know, parents. Somebody has to work. Somebody has to work.
Yeah, that's right.
Somebody has to, like, you know. What about those who earn, you know, minimum wage?
Yeah,
and their child is ill. Who's taking care of them? I have been able to, because of my reach, and again, my ex has a bit of a reach as well because she's, you know, a popular wedding planner. You know, we put it out there and say, hey, you know, this is what's going on with our child, and the outpour of support,
of course,
has been great, and the information and all that, and we've learned so many things What about parents who don't have that?
I know,
that power. And I feel for them. I honestly got it.
Well, it definitely makes you focus on. And again, I've thought about this recently when I've talked to people who've been through some really tough times. You know, we take our family and our friends and our network, like it really is the most important thing to us. And when the shit happens, you know, that they're the things that will actually be there. And you're so blessed to have a group, and also like just with the amount of people that you know will be just so much support, which is great.
It's been great. It's been great. And you know, the amount of prayers that are out there is just
of course
great. And you know, whether you believe or you don't believe, the fact that someone's taken their time to mention my child's name in their prayers, it's so moving.
Absolutely, that's
so
a great way to
moving.
look at it.
You know, do
you get back to Italy much? Do you obviously you were there.
I was in Italy that summer. There was about a 5 or 6 year stretch that I hadn't gone to Italy. Usually it's every 4 years. I'd like to go every year. I love Italy.
How far is it from Canada? Is it an ordeal to get there?
It's only a whopping 8 hours. I know here it's 24 hours. It's a long day. It's 8 hours to get there. It's nothing. But it's, you know, when you go to Italy, you don't go. It's not like you're going to, you know. I know over here you like to go to Bali a lot. So you don't go for like a week. You go to Italy for a month. And I love it there. I truly love it. I love the summer anyway. I went once in November for like a few days on a business trip, and I ended up going to my town. And I'm like, what is this place? This is not the same.
Not the same, yeah.
Dreary, dark at 4 o'clock. The beach, you can't go to the beach in November. It's cold.
Yeah.
And I feel so connected. I have a lot of family in a little village called Venerello, which is a part of a bigger city called Siderno. And when I get to
is it you've still got family there? You've still got cousins?
Yeah. Most of my relatives are there.
Right.
My grandparents lived next to each other, and then the house next, like each house, like the whole village is my family. The whole village is my family. So I just have to get to Italy. Once I get there, I got a whole group of cousins that I love, and my aunts and uncles.
And do you do any gigs there? Do you perform?
I actually, this last summer, did a show in Calabria, in Calabrese. It was the first time I had performed fully in dialect.
Wow.
And it was wild.
How'd that go?
It went well, I think. I'll tell you why. Italians are not laughers.
Yeah.
They're applauders.
Right.
So I'm performing, and they were laughing.
Sure.
But they weren't like screaming in laughter. And but at the end, you know, a big
at the end they're throwing
cheering,
roses
applauding, and stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, this is good. And there was a challenge that, you know, I talked about. Most of my comedy is about being the child of an immigrant.
Yeah.
Well, they don't understand that because they're not immigrants. They're there.
Right.
So
yes.
I changed a lot of the routine, and I talked about, like, you know, the difference between Calabria and Toronto.
Sure.
And it went well. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed a lot.
Awesome.
It was you know, take off the bucket list of things to do is to perform in your, you know. If it wasn't for Italy, I wouldn't have a career.
Yeah.
And so when I performed there, I'm like, hey, this is it. I am grateful that I'm always working. There's always something I'm doing. I'm either hosting, like as an MC, you're not just MCing weddings. You're MCing, you know, festivals and galas and fashion shows and auctions and charity stuff. So
sure,
I'm always working. I'm grateful that my because, you know, when we were asking me earlier about, you know, is your act clean and stuff? Because I've been a clean comic, there's a trust factor that people can hire me, and I'm not going to, you know, drop some F-bombs while I'm emceeing events and stuff like that.
Sure.
So yeah, it's been good. I'm very grateful for everything I have. And of course, I'm very ambitious and always looking to do more things. One thing about me is once a show's done, already in my mind is, okay, what's next? I don't like, you know, I reflect for the day. I'm like, oh, it was great. Okay, what am I working on next?
Yeah.
Even after I'd done that arena, which was like, so it was a massive accomplishment. The next day, I'm like, okay, what's the next on our plate, right? So yeah.
Awesome.
We'll see.
All right, man. Well, it's been a great pleasure having you here.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here.
I feel very accomplished having chatted to you, man. It was so great that we were able to squeeze it in.
you know, on your end, persistence is key, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
you know, you reached out, and I was enjoying Brisbane.
Yeah.
I was overly enjoying Brisbane. I had a few drinks. I went to the wharf.
Oh, Howard Smith Wharves are beautiful. Yeah,
it was great. I had
It's
a great
like,
time. But
New York.
I thought I was
mini
just
New
going to go
York.
for a walk, and we're like, hey,
Yeah.
let's have a drink. And all of a sudden, I'm like 4 beers in, and you're like, hey, come to do the
Hard
podcast.
not
I'm like,
to.
I don't know.
Yeah, hard
And then
not
you're
to.
like, but this is a great country. It's an absolute great country. And again, like I said earlier, I've performed here more than I've done in Canada, and I've been able to see it. And I plan to return many more times.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hopefully the viewers follow you on Insta, and next time you come, go to a show. If there's tickets still available this time around, if we get this out in time.
Yeah.
But either way, man, it's been an absolute pleasure.
It was
Thanks for
fantastic,
coming in, man.
Fantastic. I'm very happy to have been a part of this. I always try to get on as many podcasts as possible, and some of them are been great. But this has been awesome. Your setup
cool,
is
man.
great, and I just feel comfortable here, and I really appreciate
that,
it,
man.
Thanks a lot,
Appreciate
man.
it,
And
yeah.
hopefully you'll be able to come out watch one of my shows.
I'll be there. I'm sure I'll be there.
Excellent. The tickets are on sale.
See you, bud. Yeah, that was good.